Hello, everyone. My name is Rudy Patel, and I'm the president of UCLA LeGal. Here with us today, we have UN Women USA Los Angeles presenting their initiative on safe cities and safe public spaces for women and girls. Thank you guys so much for being here and talking to our members, both who are in person as well as those who are joining us virtually. Laura, you can take it over now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Riddy. First off, we wanted to say thank you to all of you for joining us today, and also to LeGal for even just giving us this platform to come and speak with all of your members. And we're going to be talking about violence against women and girls on college campuses. But first, I'll introduce myself. My name is Laura. I'm a young professional intern with UN Women USA LA. And I'm actually a recent graduate from UCLA. I just graduated in December, and I majored in international development and political science. And I'll hand it over to Maya to introduce herself.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Maya Adele, and I'm also a young professional intern here with UN Women USA Los Angeles. I am a current student at the University of California, Irvine, and I'm majoring in psychological science. And I want to thank you all for being here and taking the time to learn more. Here's what we'll be talking about today. First, we'll go over our safe space guidelines, UN Women USA Los Angeles' background, violence against women and girls on college campuses, UCLA and sexual assault resources, our Safe Cities campaign, other opportunities with UN Women USA Los Angeles, and stick around because we will be having a fun raffle. And in that regard, if everyone who wants to enter the raffle can just put their name in the chat, and then we'll do that at the end.
And we'll give everyone a couple seconds to do that.
During this workshop, we will be discussing topics such as sexual assault, violence, and abuse. If you feel uncomfortable at any time, please feel free to step away. We ask that everyone respects the vulnerability of their peers in this space and show discretion and confidentiality.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Ellie Thor. I'm the internship director here at UN Women USA Los Angeles. Thank you again for allowing us to join you in this space, and for everyone for taking the time to participate and learn more about violence against women and about our chapter. As we hop into the workshop, we want to establish a few what we call brave space guidelines in order to create a safe and encouraging and understanding space for us all to learn and engage. First, we invite everyone to check our privileges and assumptions at the door. We invite you all to be willing to try on new ideas or ways of doing things that might go beyond your comfort zones, and that we all believe in good intentions in this space. We encourage everyone to embrace the uncomfortable, the uncertainty, and the ooches and the ouches. We're all learning, and we're everybody in this journey in together. So be willing to learn something new and be inspired to impact the world in positive ways. We're getting together virtually, and so if there are any technological issues, we hope you give yourself and others patience as we're navigating this space together. We'll also be practicing consensual dialogue, and so as we join into this workshop today, we ask that everyone attend to and speak about your own experiences exclusively and your responses. While we refrain from blaming or shaming ourselves and others, we invite everyone to understand the difference between intent and impact. And finally, we believe in the right to be human. We all have the right to be. That means inconsistent, emotional, potentially triggered, which Maya already covered. Do take the space to support yourself. If you need to step away, please do. Let's all recognize that misinformation is taught and can be undone, and acknowledge our emotions as we practice forgiveness. Thank you again for having us, and I'll hand it back over to Laura.
Yes, thank you for sharing those guidelines, Ellie. I'm going to do a brief background on who we are and what we do as a chapter. And so for all of you here who may be unfamiliar, UN Women USA is an independent nonprofit organization that supports UN Women programs. And these projects really revolve around social, political, and economic equality for women and girls all around the globe. And we, as the local LA chapter of UN Women USA, we are trying to support the large-scale international humanitarian efforts of UN Women while also advancing more pertinent solutions to these global issues in our own local community. And we do that through educational events and street actions, also advocacy and policy supports, and also through partnering with organizations like LeGal and really trying to gain support for UN Women's vision for women and girls empowerment and gender equality. And so with that, as we start this discussion on this very important issue, I want to share with all of you this story about a UCLA student. She was an undergraduate student who graduated in 2015. And if you could all just take a few moments and read this short excerpt. And really, it's about her story going from a survivor to an activist. Okay, everyone has finished reading that, then we'll continue. But again, we're going to be sharing this presentation with all of you. So if you do want to come back to the story and also read the full-length article posted by the Washington Post, then you'll be able to do that. But we really wanted to highlight this for two reasons. One, because it is so inspirational, the story of Savannah, and two, to really show the relevance of this issue for all of you here today who are UCLA students. And so moving forward, we're going to pass it over to Denisa, who's going to take us on a violence against women quiz and really dive a little bit deeper into the state of the field of this issue. So over to you, Denisa.
Thank you, Laura. Hi, everyone. My name is Denisa Tudorake, and I am also a young professional intern with UN Women USA LA. I, like Laura, just recently graduated from UCLA. I just finished winter quarter, and I was a linguistics and psychology major with a minor in global studies. And with that, we will get started with this violence against women and girls quiz. It is basically just to kind of gauge knowledge on current statistics on this topic at college campuses. Take your time, answer to the best of your abilities, and then we will discuss the answers and the questions afterwards. Here, you guys can use your phone to scan the QR code, and I also put the link in the chat if that's easier for you all. I will give you all about 2 to 3 minutes to complete it. It's relatively short. We would greatly appreciate it if you could do a thumbs up emoji once you're finished with it. And yeah, we will discuss afterwards. Okay, wonderful. I'm seeing your guys' responses. If you're not finished, don't worry, finish on your own time. We'll just get started discussing the questions, starting with the first one, which was what constitutes as assault or harassment? If you checked every box, you are correct. And we encourage you to see UCLA's Title IX Office's glossary of terms for more information. Now we'll briefly discuss the terms that were covered within the question. Sexual assault itself occurs when physical sexual activity is engaged without the consent of the other person, or when the other person is unable to consent to the activity. This activity can include physical force, violence, or anything else that takes advantage of the other person's. Quid pro quo itself is when a person's submission to unwelcome sexual conduct is implicitly or explicitly made the basis for decisions such as employment, academic evaluation, grades, or any other decision affecting participation in a university program or activity. A hostile environment is one that a reasonable person would find to be intimidating or offensive. Unwelcome sexual or other sex-based conduct is sufficiently severe, persistent, or pervasive that it unreasonably denies, limits, or interferes with the person's participation in or benefit from their education or employment. Sexual conduct includes sexual or romantic advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal, nonverbal, physical conduct of a sexual nature. And lastly, stalking is the repeated conduct of monitoring, observing, surveying, threatening, communicating, or interfering with property that would cause a person to fear for their safety or the safety of others. And the next question is, at leading campuses across the country, how many female undergraduates say they have been sexually assaulted by force or because they were passed out, asleep, or incapacitated by alcohol or drugs? The answer is C, 1 in 4. And according to a national survey by the LA Times, USC surveyed even reported higher numbers than the national average, with 31% of female undergrads saying they were sexually assaulted sometime during their college years. The rate at Stanford was 23.8%, and at Caltech it was 14.3%. The next question is, in 2019, how many incidents of sexual assault, including rape and fondling, were reported on UCLA campus? In total, there were 100 incidents of sexual assault, including rape and fondling, reported on the UCLA campus, with 77 occurring on campus property. And there were 26 incidents of reported rape at UCLA and 16 incidents of dating violence in 2019. Next question. The next question was, what are possible health consequences for survivors of sexual assault? If you chose all of these health consequences, you would be correct. Every single one of these can and has been experienced by sexual assault survivors. There can be multiple negative effects due to violence against women beyond the initial physical injury, including ongoing poor physical and mental health, and various stress-related disorders that can lead to drug and alcohol abuse, eating and sleep disorders, physical inactivity, poor self-esteem, smoking, and unsafe sexual behavior. The next question was a true or false question, and it was that women who are assaulted during their first semester of school tend to have lower GPAs than those who are not exposed to sexual violence. This fact is unfortunately true. The lower GPA rates typically are a consequence of the previously mentioned health consequences, and this correlates to the rate at which survivors of sexual assault and dating violence transfer or drop out of college altogether. The fact is, 1 in 3 of survivors transfer or drop out altogether. Again, this is also likely tied to the physical and mental health consequences. Yes, the next question was also a true or false question in which when reporting a sexual assault to the UCLA Police Department, survivors have the option to keep their personal information confidential. And yes, this is in fact true. A survivor's personal information is protected by confidentiality by law enforcement. And in regards to the second question here, no, you do not have to make a police report if you are undecided about prosecution. You can make a police report even if you are undecided, because your report itself creates a permanent record of what occurred, including all collected evidence, and provides time to consider your next steps, which may include prosecution. Even if one does not wish the case to be prosecuted, filing a report assists police to gain more knowledge of an assailant. For example, if another victim comes forward and wants to file charges against that same assailant, the police may contact you and ask you to assist in the prosecution to help secure a conviction. And that is all for the questions. Thank you so much for participating, and I hope that was informative. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Denisa, for guiding us through that activity. I think based on the statistics and information that you shared, we can all see just how prevalent an issue this is for college students. And because of that, we do want to share with you some definitions that we've gathered both from UN Women and also UCLA's own Title IX office. And really doing that because we want to give you guys the equipment and tools that you can use, because there are circumstances where you may question whether or not something you've experienced is harassment or abuse. So it's important to know what those definitions actually are. So starting with gender-based violence, this is, and actually forgot to mention, moving forward, we are using the definition of women as any person who, regardless of their sex assigned at birth, as anyone who identifies as a woman. And so going into gender-based violence, this is any act of physical, mental, or social abuse against any person based on their gender roles. And that can include violence, threats, coercion, manipulation, deception, cultural expectation, weapons, or economic circumstances. Now, violence against women is any act of this gender-based violence that results in the harm or suffering of a woman. And that can also include threats of physical, sexual, or psychological harm, coercion, deprivation of liberty, and it can also take place either in the public or private life of the victim. And then sexual violence is defined as any sexual act committed against the will of another person, and that could either be because the person did not give consent or in a circumstance where consent could not be given. And so an example of that would be if the person was a child, had a mental disability, or was drunk or unconscious because of alcohol or drug use. And continuing with these definitions, sexual abuse is defined as an act or threat of physical intrusion of a sexual nature. And this can include physical force, violence, threat, or intimidation, causing the other person's intoxication, so purposefully giving them alcohol or drugs, or using the fact that someone is drunk or using drugs as an excuse to commit a crime, basically. And then sexual harassment is the harassment of a person by making unwelcome sexual advances. And this could be either sexual or romantic. It could also include requests for sexual favors, like Denisa mentioned previously, a quid pro quo situation. So an example of perhaps a TA or even a professor who insinuates that they might improve your grade or give you praise or something like that in exchange for something that is inappropriate and does institute a sexual favor. And it also includes verbal, nonverbal, or physical aggression, intimidation, or hostility based on gender or gender expression and identity. And then our last definition is intimate partner violence. And this is really important for us to highlight here because 33% of rapes are committed by a current or former partner. And this really includes any type of coercive behavior, whether it be physical, sexual, or psychological attack that occurs between maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend or anyone that you're having an intimate relationship with. And now we're going to discuss a few other factors that go into this and really define and shape this issue. So first off is victim shaming, which is basically the tendency to focus on the behavior of a victim rather than focusing on the responsibility that should be placed on the perpetrator or the one committing the abuse or egregious act. And so asking questions like, oh, why were they out late alone? What were they wearing? Things like that all gives attention to the victim and not on the perpetrator. And then another issue is underreporting. According to a 2015 survey that was conducted over 27 universities in the US, only 5 to 28% reported sexual assault and sexual misconduct. So meaning that most women who do experience this don't report it. And that could be because of a numerous reasons. It could be because of victim shaming. It could also be because they think they might not be believed, or they might even fear retaliation from the abuser. And so these reports are often understated and is an actually more pervasive issue than what it might look like just from statistics. And so knowing all of that, we really wanted to take this presentation and not only provide you with these definitions, but also resources that we'll be discussing later on, and really give you the chance to be a student advocate, knowing that students who do experience these types of violence or abuses are more likely to report to their friends and family. And so being able to provide them with any support or resources if they should choose to disclose an experience with you. And on that note, I'll hand it over to Sonia, who's going to take us through another activity so we can do a little bit of self-reflection on our own experiences on campus.
Thank you for that. Hi, my name is Sonia Dama. I'm also a young professional intern with the UN Women USA LA chapter. I'm currently a first year at Pitzer studying human biology, and super excited to bring this activity to you. So for context, the privilege walk really just helps you kind of reflect on your privilege, and also paying close attention and focus on how you identify in terms of your gender. So how it will work is there going to be a series of statements that we'll go through. And if the statement applies to you, you're just going to keep track of it. You can use a piece of paper, pull out your phone in your notes app, just some sort of way of marking if this does apply to you. And for any statement that does not apply to you, simply leave it alone. Any questions? Perfect. Okay. So for our first statement, I don't feel the need to bring a friend or buddy to a party for safety reasons. So again, if this applies to you, go ahead and put a tally mark. If it does not, leave it alone. And if at any point anyone has any questions about the statements, feel free to raise your hand, put it in chat so we can clarify that. I don't feel unsafe when I'm out late at night. I've never felt uncomfortable on campus because of the way someone was interacting with me or looking at me. And this can be anywhere from the gym, classroom, on the street, on campus. I've never called a friend or family member to feel safer when I was walking alone on campus at night. I've never thrown away a drink just because I left it alone at a party. I've never felt self-conscious in my choice of outfit depending on those around. I was never given advice geared towards safety in a college environment by a loved one or guardian. I'm comfortable talking to counselors and or Title IX coordinators regarding sexual violence and sexual harassment incidences.
I've never thought about precautionary actions, like making sure only my door unlocks when I return to the car, or making sure I always carry pepper spray. I have someone I would be comfortable confiding in regarding experiences with sexual violence and sexual assault. Thank you for joining us with that on that. I know it does get difficult to recount those experiences because they could be very traumatic, but again, appreciate it and for putting, yes. All right, so in chat right now, Denisa put a link to the Padlet. You can also just scan the QR code on the screen. And with this, basically, you'll see 3 rows just as it is on the bottom of the slide, and you'll have scores, so 10 to 8, 7 to 4, 3 to 0, and these should correspond with however many tally marks you have. And if you could just click the add button and go ahead and write your name and the number you got. If you're not comfortable putting your name, that is okay. You can go ahead and either just make a fake name, or you can just keep a number, just so we can all see kind of where we're at as a group. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I'll also stop sharing this screen and I'll share the Padlet presently. Except I lost the share screen function. Okay.
Great. Yeah, I think that 4 should be good one column down, but yeah, so as you can see, with our low scores, you're seeing a lot of the same issues that we all collectively face. And obviously we're predominantly female dominated women group today. And I think that also just goes to show the impact of gender identity on these issues, especially on college campuses. And I know Denisa went through a lot of those statistics, but again, just take the time to reflect and kind of understand what this means for us. Yeah, so we're gonna move on to questions in a second, but got it. Great, thank you. All right, so basically now if everyone could just think about what statements made you think the most, and looking at the response on the Padlet, again, you saw 0 to 3 being applicable, which again just means that we have gone through most of those experiences altogether. But are you surprised by the number compared to everyone else's, even though I do, again, know that a lot of us were very, very similar in our experiences? Adding on to that, what are some of your thoughts that came to your mind? And how's your gender impacted your perception of safety at UCLA? Feel free whenever you're ready to put a few words in the chat or speak up verbally if you feel comfortable doing so. You can also private message me and I can read it out loud if you're not comfortable having your name attached to your response.
I guess to just start it off, one privilege that I've never really thought about consciously is the fact that like I have someone to talk to in case anything ever did happen. Like I have loved ones in my life, and I feel like having that be on the list was really eye-opening for me because I've never really acknowledged that as like a conscious privilege, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Awesome. Someone in chat said the 33% being from partners was eye-opening because they didn't think it was that high. Yeah, and again, I think that relates to what Denisa just said, that yes, she feels comfortable in confiding in someone, but for a lot of people, that confidant may be a loved one that, again, like losing that person by them doing things to you, that's really traumatic on a lot of different levels. Great. But yeah, I keep on thinking about it. I think that's the main point of this whole beautiful event that they put on. These aren't simple questions to answer, but going forward, I hope you just realize what privilege you have and kind of understand where we all are at as women today in college and in our young adult years. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for leading that activity. Knowing all these experiences we just discussed in the privilege walk, we want to take the time to tell you your rights. Victim rights in California, for those interested in learning about the rights that protect domestic and sexual violence survivors. So Marcy's Law, an amendment also referred to as the California Victims Bill of Rights Act, which highlights the rights of crime victims and ensures their protection and equal treatment. This includes the right to privacy, safety, confidential information, trial, investigation, and refusal. Here are UCLA rules and policies. Because you are a UCLA student, we have taken the time to gather information specific to UCLA that some people might not be aware of. We will send you this after the presentation so you can spend more time looking it over.
Yeah, and also just wanted to highlight here that these are graphics created by our own high school intern teams that they've gathered for you. And like Maya said, we'll be sharing them with you.
Yes. Here are some confidential resources for students. These resources can support with legal counseling, support counseling, community support, medical treatment, and rape exams. First, there's CARE, Advocacy Office for Sexual and Gender-Based Violence and Misconduct, the Santa Monica Rape Treatment Center, Student Legal Services, and CAPS, which is Counseling and Psychological Services. Next slide. Here are also additional support services for UCLA students. There's the Resilience in Your Student Experience, RISE, it's a wellness center. There's GRIT, Guidance, Resilience, Integrity, and Transformation Peer Coaches, CSCO, UCLA Safe Ride Service, and BIT. Again, we will be sending you this information after the presentation.
So sorry, I think I accidentally clicked the link. Do you see the presentation again?
And hi, everybody. My name is Paloma Bustos, and I am a coordinator with the chapter here at UN Women USALA. As part of my profession, I actually work with crime victims. I work at the RISE clinic at Loyola Law School, and RISE stands for Rights and Systems Enforced. And so just what we do is we provide legal representation to crime victims. So just like Maya was talking about Marcy's laws and how crime victims actually have protections when they have experienced a crime, we help to enforce and protect those rights. So like your right to privacy, your right to be notified of anything that's going on with your case. Our clinic actually is responsible for making sure that the victim is made aware of everything that's going on with their case. And so I know hopefully the information that's being provided here today has been very helpful to all of you. Hopefully it gives you an idea of what you can do, or you as a friend, or you if yourself have gone through something like this, what you can do in these type of situations. Because as we have shared here with you today, like when survivors or when somebody has experienced sexual assault, they experience a lot of feelings. They They might feel a state of shock. They might feel a state of confusion. They might feel guilty. They might feel afraid. They might feel embarrassed. They might be in a state of denial, or they might start to minimize what happened. But also they don't know where to go, or they don't know who to call, right? So like somebody was mentioning in our presentation earlier today, oftentimes they go to a friend or a family member. So hopefully that you saw some of the things that you can access, other things that you can do as a friend when somebody does come to talk to you or feels comfortable sharing their experience with you. One of the most important things you could do in the very beginning is listen to their story. If they feel willing to talk to you, right? You don't want to be pressuring your friend into talking to you or giving you details about what happened if they don't feel comfortable. But you are letting them know that you're open to listening to them at whatever they want to share or whenever they actually feel comfortable. So, I mean, one of the most important things you can do is be patient. And you can simply acknowledge how difficult it is to say something and that you feel honored that they actually trust you enough to talk to them about what's going on. Um, some of the things that you can say is, I'm sorry that this has happened to you, and also reaffirming that this was not their fault. Because like I mentioned earlier, they often have feelings of guilt and shame, or they feel embarrassed. So we want to make sure that we validate that experience and that we remind them that it was not what they were wearing, it was not what they were doing. At the end of the day, whoever assaulted them made the decision or the choice to hurt them. So that's why we want to make sure that we reaffirm. We also want to, if you don't know how to help that friend, you can ask them, how can I help you? How can I support you? And it's perfectly okay. Like if you don't know what to do in those type of situations, you can offer to connect them. Like, have you thought about calling a hotline, or have you thought about calling an organization, right? Because if you don't know what to do, it's okay, right? Because we're not all ready or prepared to be put in that spot or in that situation. But I'm glad that you guys are participating in this presentation. That way you do have an idea of what you can do if somebody does come to you. Some of the things that you can avoid saying is saying like things like, I can't believe that person would do such a thing, right? Like, especially if it's somebody that's very popular around campus, maybe they're like a famous, like one of those popular football players, or like baseball, and like, everybody knows them and they have this persona, they're charismatic. So like, really, he would do such a thing? I can't believe it, right? So like, when you're doing things like that, you might be implying that you don't believe them, or maybe they were exaggerating in their experience. And again, don't ask for details if they don't feel comfortable sharing details. Also, don't minimize or say things like, are you sure that's what happened? um really, like, like, because again, you're questioning their own experience. And also try to avoid asking why questions, right? So like, don't just immediately assume that, why didn't you just leave the situation, right? Maybe they're trying to tell you like what happened at a party, or they're trying to tell you what happened with their boyfriend or their partner or something like that. And you ask them, like, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you just call for help? Or why didn't you just call the police, right? So you want to try to avoid asking those why questions, and perhaps reframing things like, was there anything that you were afraid of, or what kept you from calling, or, things that may not sound as judgmental. And encourage them to seek help. That's one of the things that I would emphasize, is because it is it could be a very traumatic experience. Encourage them to seek help, either from an organization, an advocate, law enforcement, whoever they feel more comfortable with. And you offering that support, I can go with you to make the report if they choose to make the report to law enforcement, or I can help you, or I can go with you to the organization on campus that can help you. I know a place that can help you with this.
Thank you so much, Paloma. And again, thank you for everyone participating today. I hope the resources that have been shared so far by the team and the activities that you've engaged in have been informating, if not enlightening. And thank you so much, Paloma, for going through some of the language that we can engage in to be more supportive and also make a change in our community. As you might be able to tell, violence against women is one of the key issues for our chapter and also the UN Women organization. It's one that we rally around. So we wanted to take a moment to kind of highlight one of the really important projects and campaigns that our chapter works on currently. And it's an effort to make a structural change, right? To make our cities more safer long-term and implement actual legislative and policy changes to see our streets and our cities become more safe for women and girls and all. So Safe Cities Los Angeles County, this is one of our projects, and it's in alignment with UN Women's flagship program called Safe Cities, Free of Violence for Women and Girls. This program, it basically develops, it implements, and it also assesses tools, policies, and comprehensive approaches on the prevention of and response to sexual harassment and other forms of sexual violence against women and girls. So for our chapter, our goal with this project is raising awareness, right? I'm going to take a quick moment to allow the presentation to get updated here so you can see and follow along. Again, our goal is, of course, to raise awareness about the initiative, to inform Los Angeles citizens about it, and also garner insights from community members and support from community members to demonstrate a constituent interest to local representatives, and then ultimately to call for action, to see sort of structural legislative change and call for all cities of Los Angeles County to become official safe city partners and commit to making LA County safer for all, including women and girls. I'm going to hop into in the next slide what that kind of means and the commitments that city partners agree to when they enter this initiative. Right, so there are overarching 4 kind of main points that cities commit to when they become safe city partners. They commit to identifying gender responsive, locally relevant and owned interventions. So they start by conducting a study in their own city to identify the circumstances and the situations and the issues that all members of their communities might have as it relates to safety. And then we, or city partners, develop and effectively implement comprehensive laws and policies to prevent and respond to sexual violence in public spaces. And because it is tailored to each city that looks differently, there's not a one size fits all to improving the safety in our cities. So that could mean increasing street lights or improving monitoring of public transportation that can look differently. The third thing that city partners commit to is investing in the safety and the economic viability of public spaces to make them more safe for everyone who is engaging in those spaces. And then ultimately, of course, changing attitudes and behaviors to promote women's and girls' rights to enjoy public spaces free from violence. So this is one of the important campaigns that we work on to make sort of a legislative and structural change in our city. On to the next slide. We did want to give you a little bit more information about how you might be able to join our chapter and support if women's safety, violence against women, women's rights, and gender equity is something that speaks to you and something that you might be passionate about. First of all, everyone and anyone who is passionate about these things is always welcome to become a member. And if you would like a volunteer and participate to the extent that you have the bandwidth. To do that, you can hop over to our page, which we've linked, and we'll also send that in that follow-up email to everyone today. You can also contact LA at unwomenusa.org, which we've also included there. We also have a ton of community events that are open to the public as well, and you can find information about those on our social media. On all platforms, our @ is UN Women LA, and we typically post about upcoming and previous events, so that's a way that you can keep up to date in a way. And then also we wanted to take a moment to spotlight any additional opportunities that we do have in our chapter. They are always publicized on our volunteer match page. So there we post opportunities and roles from spots on the internship program or as coordinators or as members. So again, if gender equity and women's rights is something that is of interest to you, we absolutely encourage you to hop on over to that page and see if any of those roles speak to you and you might be interested in. I want to take a little bit of a moment also to talk about the benefits of membership. If you are interested in just becoming a member of our chapter, might not have the capacity to commit to a particular role, but would like to volunteer or would like to just be a part of our organization. Of course, you get discounted pricing on events. You can also become an advocate by joining our campaigns and our committees. You do get 8 hours of free professional coaching when you do join the chapter. That can help you achieve your sort of personal, professional, or academic goals. And then you do get to keep or receive information about most current news and UN Women global policy and program development. That is also something that's shared with all of our members, as well as just joining a committee and community of like-minded people who are really passionate about gender and social equity and women's rights. I've linked a little bit of information below on where you can get more details or who to contact if you are interested. So go ahead and check that out if that is something that speaks to you. Thank you.
If anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask. Again, we thank you so much for being here and listening and taking part.
If you haven't already, you can also input your name in the chat because we will be moving on to the raffle and we'll be raffling off 3 t-shirts. So if you want to be in that raffle, please put your name in the chat if you haven't already. Okay, if there are no questions, we can go on to the raffle, but also give Maya a couple moments to input those names really quick.
I'm just curious to ask the people that are in the meeting, have any of you or were any of you aware of some of the resources that are available at UCLA for people that have experienced sexual assault? Really said no.
I know when I was a student, I was not aware of 98% of them. The only one I knew was the CSOs because my sister happened to be one. But even as a student, I didn't know a single person who actually used the CSOs, which says a lot too.
And the reason I say that is because one of the additional things that I wanted to mention is like if somebody has experienced assault, like they don't have to go through this alone. So hopefully from the resources, they see that there can be advocates or support people that can be there with you through the whole process. If you decide to report it to law enforcement, for instance, or if you decide to, for instance, if you're not sure whether or not you want to report it, you do have the right to have somebody there with you, a support person that can be sitting there with you when you go and speak to law enforcement. You even have that right to that support person when you do have, once it becomes a part of the criminal justice process, meaning once it actually it's in the point where it's going to be prosecuted, you have the right to have somebody there with you. So hopefully the resources emphasize how important it is to access that support and that you don't have to go through this alone. And even like accessing that the counseling services that are offered by some of those organizations are also very important because survivors can, like I mentioned, they can experience a range of feelings. And those feelings can, the way that we can help to manage them is by accessing support and accessing a professional. And you guys can always reach us afterwards too. If you guys, if nothing comes up today, if nothing comes up today, hopefully you can reach us afterwards as well.
Yes, definitely. If any questions do come up, we are 1 email away. Maya, do we feel ready to?
Yes. Okay. So we will be raffling 3 Her Story t-shirts. Before we pick the winners, I wanted to invite you all to follow our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and check out our website. And again, if you have any questions at all, you can send us an email. And if you don't win today's shirt, then you can also purchase it by emailing la@unwomenusa.org. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and screen share. But before I do, again, last call if anyone wants to enter the raffle. I can quickly enter your name in if you are interested. But other than that, I could screen share.
Now we got one more entry, if you saw that.
Okay, 1 second. Laura will be dropping. Yes, Laura will be bringing the shirts to Laura, if you want to explain. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be delivering the shirts to Riddy next week and she will distribute to the winners.
Sounds great.
Um,
And thank you all for being here with us. We greatly appreciate the time you guys took for this presentation. I personally learned a lot, like the time you guys took out for the resources at UCLA. Like Laura said, how she didn't really know that many of them when she was a student. I too didn't. So I'm sure our other members can attest to similar emotions, which isn't necessarily the best, but this event really helped me, and I'm sure it helped everybody else, even the ones that are watching the recording. So thank you guys so much for taking your time.
Thank you so much, Riddy, for allowing us to come. It was great collaborating with LeGal. Hopefully we can work together again in the future. Denisa, do you want to drop in one final link to the follow-up survey that we have? Just so if you guys want to give us some feedback on how you liked the activities, how you're feeling right now, that'd be great. And we can also stick around for a couple minutes in case anyone has